Okay, Master Mason note coming at you this morning. Figured I'd do one up. Just want to get into it this morning with kind of some end of the week review stuff, but I want to touch into it in a way that, well, I wouldn't do it any other way if I didn't consider myself a master. Now, I'm not the kind of person that really cares what other people have told me. Whether I am or whether I'm not, I get that you make mistakes. It's gonna, especially in new stuff. You know, there's no excuse for making mistakes later on, but you learn it once, you do your thing. But I really wanted to get into, the sensitive topics, and I wanted to try to do it the best I can with managed hands. I got all time. I still got all. In here, I want to try to be as functionable with the upper staff, the senior staff, as possible. Now, I try to understand, I don't like to use names because I like the universal field that this material can be presented in. And as an IMA, thermal, sawyer, carpenter, fisherman, whatever, they have immediate irrational numbers, horizon problems, singularity issues, and adding the mass together. That'll really get you there. You go fishing, there's no fish in the pond, you're not going to catch anything kind of a situation. And I don't really want to get too heavy duty into what that situation stuff will mean. I think it's open enough where that even if you can do things, it doesn't matter too much, so I'm trying to stay away from that. But what I want to get into here, is I've been around on a lot of floors and things like that. I've done a lot of space negotiation. I've worked with a lot of managers and foreman assistants to lay out stations and try to battle plan those things. And they're not just this order, that order. Sometimes it's the morning setup stuff. Sometimes it's how you're communicating in the rotations. If you can get a lot of that stuff done and out of the way, you present a lot of problems later on from coming up, or from certain positions you can get a better grade and be able to process a lot smoother, not necessarily faster, but it should go faster. You want to have that output for that result to be mechanical, not physical. At least that's the goal. And it takes a little time, especially if you're doing it like me. I don't know if they quantify the same way, but it's like you want to go hard out front, get that down, make a few mistakes, but try to keep them from the killing you mistakes. You're going to learn them immediately when it's a mistake like that. Don't do it like that again. There's setups and situations, whether it be a big stack on a little stack, having to prep it down, bring the other one around and set it on top, turn stuff around, or cracks and stacks and grade and stuff like that. But for me, I wanted to really get into, I just like to jump right into it. What would I like for the perfect burner's position in there? And I got cut off a little bit yesterday in my video. And so I want to be gentle. It's not that I'm gentle in the fact that I feel that there's any other, that the setup's wrong. I want to be gentle because time. It takes time to move the material and have the overhead and watch it well enough to know that one of those spaces is going to be manageable enough, whether it be stockyard or the actual burner's position, anything in that immediate horizon that you can touch with a torch in your hand. How does it work? Hoses, stock, your flip and burn stuff. I've at a lot of places, sometimes every rock is necessary, and sometimes you have time and the money to be able to deal with that on the overhead. Usually if you have the money, it provides you with a much stronger cushion in time. And with experience on top of that, that adds that off even better. It's just the experience says you don't make that number because of rock not cut. Even if it's good, and you get tagged a couple of times and you just realize sensibly about the orders. Hopefully that doesn't do anything amongst the association or quoting bases or anything like that. I don't get too much into that. That's a lot of the marketing up top and stuff like that. I do the marketing from the labor perspective. They help quote those times. They help manufacture those times into, these are 24 10-footers, and in that stock range, if there's, if it takes one amount of time for a rock, then there's 10 rocks. If there's 20 rocks and every 10 rock there's a dumpster turn or something like that, then those things start to be manufacturally processed on those. They're not enough to make a complete mass gap for that. But as a ratio, like on all of the matrix of all the cuts, you want to put a 5-minute tag on those things. You want to have them study those things. It doesn't seem like it's relative until you memorize it later. It's 5 minutes on this is just something you can learn. That should be the standard weight or mass or periodic number of that element. And so you go about studying those things. And I know it doesn't seem like, well, why would you need that in a stone? They say it all the time. It's not rocket science until quotes come over to you, until a question of the job, the quote of your job is asked of you to do certain things, and then you need processes of that. Now, somebody else is probably going to have that answer, and it's usually about looking for one or two things on the floor that'll give you that answer. And again, that's all on those schematics of the matrix of all the cut design and something like that. We're just looking for the irrational number that adds another 5 minutes to it or subtracts another 5 minutes to a half hour in processes, whatever the element is. And so you want to have that whole system, and it's a monster. It's like chemical analysis for the safety report guy. Every chemical, hydraulic oil, whiteout, gasoline, how do you get it in your eye? How did you get it in your eye? How do you get it out of your eye? What are all the safety standards on those things? They're all processed and thermal and rock face, and cutting with a saw to me. So it's not that they're difficult to be able to do, but sometimes quantifying, well, that's a 5-minute operation, or I need another half hour on those things, is the same way to say, I'm a safety guy, and I want to figure out blueprint engineering and a training process for what this is. To me, they don't make a big difference. And of course, that's my director of information technology. They want you to be able to do Delhi's prison system in terms of this is how you classify people in group without harassment, and its skills and qualifications to Thermaler's position, Sawyer's position. Is there time and training on those things? For the police and military variation on it, we're just sticking with the police. That the extremity of those cases say time, and that's the law. The law speaks, it spoke, and you have to respect that, and any person who is defined by that position is what that is. And in the stone mill, it works a lot of the same way. There's all kinds of freedom, but there are very specific rules about the margins on those rules and how things are done. Maybe you feel a certain way about old time and work your performance, so that's why you don't do things. And on other things like that, that's why you do. I don't feel right about that. Something's not. And obviously, this is all day. If you're not thinking about this, then you're not really in the reactor. You're not really making that decision, and any one of these things can absolutely pile drive you at some point in time, and they're probably going to. At least that's me. I go that way. That may not be for you, but you ain't got my physics, don't do my physics. So college students, all right, so I got a guy with a resume X. What prisoners, what station, when you put the numbers on it, does Old Blue make good noises instead of the shing right there at the back end of that rock coming down? You want to make sure that you're on that stuff. Now, that's not the end of the world, but you want to be on that technique. You want to be able to do that before you position somebody. You want to do that while they're in there watching them. And I'm all for that. On the clock, I'm down for it. It's something I never used to do. I never really liked too much. Delaware Basin, I hate to admit it, they put a bad taste in my mouth when it comes to that stuff. I had a lot of operations, worked out, done a certain way, and then it's like every other day, try to half it out something different. It's like, I'm happy to do this, at least communicate with me, and quit fucking hot firing crew and getting rid of people, won't you? But anyway. This time, visually checking the volume of the albumin protein. Anyway. There's a little bit more established out here. When you see the player stuff, I love old schoolers. It's easier to blueprint around steel beams on the floor than it is other things. Although I don't have it individually at a place, I usually get it in the fact that, somebody's going to say he's at least a smart guy, he's strong, he's fit, something. It's because you put that many years in there, so you're going to start hitting metal. You're probably going to start hitting metal. So you try to avoid it. Process work, it's just you and that rock. You might get some boss stuff, but they floating around. They doing other things. Direct physics. If you're right into the rock, you're right into the rock. Next rock, crack, read, this, that, or the other. And then one of the big ones come around. It's like, well, that's that over there. And those are so perfect to write those down. Get those down there. You don't need permission. Forgiveness is one of those things you can do, but if it didn't affect the operation, then there's not too much to forgive with it. It's just a yes or no after that, and when we do that, and if it doesn't, it's not yours. Don't fight too much about it. It's process, working the negotiation with that. Maybe a little bit of this here. Is this a time thing? You got to get that inch. You got